All right, welcome all my friends. Welcome all again to another video, this time for Matthew Good Band, Last of the Ghetto Astronauts. And this one was released in 1995, and I've got the space theme going for the astronauts, but this isn't space rock. If you don't know who the Matthew Good Band is, you probably didn't grow up in Canada, but maybe you're younger. And Matthew Good Band, they ruled the airplay charts for just a few years. They were like one of the biggest Canadian bands going for a little while, which is easy to forget because they kind of fell into obscurity a little bit because of lots of egos, and they broke up on sort of a low note, though some would say kind of a high note creatively. I think their last record's incredible, but there weren't really any singles off it, so it was destined to fail compared to the few that came before it. Anyway, this is at the very start. Matthew Good had been gigging around like coffee shops and that, and been playing very wordy, folky music, and he kind of honed it in a little bit with the songwriting. You can tell here, and going into Apparitions, the next record, that he'd follow a more standard verse, chorus, verse pop format, and this one is, yeah, like I said, it's a very jangle pop affair compared to the very kind of muscular sounding bass and drum driven, has kind of a metallic sheen of their next two records. This one, yeah, it's not jangle pop, but it kind of sounds like it. And the reason why it sounds so differently is basically that Matt was playing acoustic guitars, but plugged into electric amps, and everything sounds electric, but then it doesn't. It sounds kind of thin, and it's the exact opposite of what Apparitions and Rico and the next batch of hits would sound. Yes, and Dave Genn wasn't a full member yet. He would be a full member on the next one, which would establish kind of the classic lineup. Though the bass player wouldn't stay around very much longer too. So there's kind of two classic lineups. This one, of course, it was released in December of 1995, so obviously there wasn't much in the way of marketing. It was on an indie label. It was released independently, and it was recorded for $5,000 Canadian. And anyway, it was later released on A&M when it started to build up, all the hype and just generated hype, really much music and the radio and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, so it was definitely easy to get. It eventually went gold in, I think it was January of 2003. So after the band was they were done by then, but Matt Good had his solo career going, and Dave Genn moved on to 5440. So it opens up with Alabama Motel Room, and of course I remember the video for this one playing on Much Music in the 90s. Holly McNarland was in it, who is a friend of Matt Good and recorded with him both in the band and solo. And yeah, it's a really great introduction to this band. I just love the it's a little repetitious compared to a lot of what they would be known for, but in a good way. And I love the lyric, "When the night comes in, I hope I'm out of the rain." And there's a lot of darkness in the verses, and it's like, ooh, like, okay, this is how we're starting out the career, They're not they're not starting it out like the Monkees or the Beatles started their careers with, innocent, catchy pop rock. Like, this is some very, Matthew Good's gonna get some heavy subject matter, and it'll just get heavier from here. He's actually not jaded yet on this record with the songwriting. You can tell with the next record, and way more so the couple following up. It's like, oh, this is a jaded individual now. The next single is Symbolistic White Walls, and I'm pretty sure Matt doesn't do this one live. He doesn't do too many of these ones live anymore, and he didn't for years or even decades, but we saw him do a couple of these on one of the last tours, and that was really incredible. So Symbolistic White Walls, She's Got a New Disguise, one of my favorite from Matt Good Band, not just this record, but one of my favorites. Native Son, Vermilion, Every Name Is My Name sounds kind of like a dream. Vermilion, someone said it was the greatest almost hit the band ever had. It should have been a holiday. It should have been a hit. and of course the chorus, he sings Holiday. Haven't Slept in Years is a very different take than the one that would end up on the Ray Gun EP, and that's the one that I would hear on the radio, and I'm sure everyone else would. They re-recorded it, and it is better on the Ray Gun EP, which makes me say it's probably the weakest song here, because it's kind of rendered obsolete by that other version, but it's still good. You're not going to pick up the needle or go to skip the CD or the Spotify. Radio Bomb, that was one of my favorites when I was a kid. It's just got a really nice drive to it, and yeah, the lyrics are kind of like almost funny, like, because it obviously, I don't know, there's obviously a lot of political like awareness with Matthew Good and how he writes things. He's a very aware individual, but there's also kind of a naivety to this one. So I kind of like that, because you wouldn't get that going forward. Fearless is one that we saw him do on a recent acoustic tour, and that's another one of the highlights. Maybe that, and She's Got a New Disguise, and a couple of the singles, which there are only a couple of. And then The War Is Over, and that's the problem here. The War Is Over is a really great finisher, but on the CD and streaming, it is followed up by Omissions of the Omen, which is a kind of a unlisted track. Remember when bands used to do that? Some of you do. And yeah, that just brings everything full circle after The War Is Over. Like, The War Is Over is a great finishing song, but anyone used to playing that CD all the time, like I did, you have to kind of follow it up with Omissions of the Omen. And that's where the First World Problems line comes from, that is often attributed to Matthew Good for popularizing that, and which is kind of true, because this did sell really well in Canada. So that phrase was, it was around in 95, but he didn't, it's also attributed that he made it, like he came up with it, but it goes back to, and I'm sure he read it, there was a book written in the 1980s that said some term about, people in their first world problems, which, I always live by that. Like, it's like that Weird Al song, like, what are people complaining about? We have it so good, even though, there's some shitty things, of course. So yeah, so this vinyl came out on Darktown, and Universal, of course, but back when it came out, they were an independent one, So anyway, I didn't say that John Shepp was the one that produced this. I had that in my notes, but I ended up not looking at them. And Dave Genn was, he was becoming a full-time member, because he's not credited on, one of the songs at least, anyway. Oh no, he is credited on every song. It's just he's the organ Rhodes player. He's not the guitarist. And when he would become the guitarist, that next EP and that next album, you can tell there's a lot more muscle to these songs. So yeah. So this is an incredible debut. Something that's a little spotty. I don't know how many people this is their favorite Matthew Good Band record. I think out of all the 4 main events, they've probably all been my favorites, because when I was a kid, I definitely liked Underdogs the best, because I thought, it doesn't have any filler, but what I considered filler were kind of the slower ones off Beautiful Midnight and that. And then I realized, as I aged and matured, I'm like, some of that's the best stuff, like the more kind of introspective and dark, moody songs that MGB would do. So yeah, this is the vinyl, and there's no music on side 4. So yeah, they could have put Omissions of the Omen on there, but they did not. So that's always weird when 90s CDs and 90s CDs get reissued on vinyl. It's like Failure with Magnified, and then it's not, that one wasn't endorsed by the band, and it was also missing a very key component to it that kind of bridged 2 of the songs together, and that was taken out. And for casual fans or whatever, they wouldn't notice, or they'd be whatever. But that, we're all us 90s CDs addicts and everything are there like, what happened to that one part? Like, that whole part's missing. Like, a whole minute of music is missing. And I think Ken Andrews was pretty angry that that was put out without the band's blessing, but that's another story. We might get to that album actually this year, because there's another band and album that I love. So yeah, tell me what some of your favorites are from MGB's Last of the Ghetto Astronauts. And you know, this is a huge recommend for me. I really love this record, but I wouldn't ever say to anyone this is the first Matthew Good album you should check out, solo or with the band. I would probably recommend Underdogs or Beautiful Midnight, but this one comes with just a glowing recommendation once you're well versed and into Matt Good and the Matt Good Band. So thanks so much for watching, everyone, and look forward to more videos. There's a lot in the pipeline now. Finally, I said that months and months ago, and then, you know, a lot of personal stuff hit, and you know, overtime and stuff like that. So thanks again for sticking with me. And yeah, we'll see you in the next video. We got a lot more here. Thanks.